Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a new episode of One Vision. Barb and I are back after a little bit of a break. We were traveling around the world and sightseeing and talking to different people. So we are bringing some good news back to you. Barb, how are you?
It's Friday the day we're recording this. How can it not be a good day? It's a Friday afternoon.
It is, and it's almost the holidays. I can't believe how early this year everything started. I think it was in September when I started seeing hints of Christmas stuff. And even before Halloween, everything is unleashed. There is Christmas presents, early shopping, Christmas trees, wreaths, decorations everywhere. I don't know what's going on at this stage. I think I'll just keep the Christmas tree up the entire year because this makes no sense anymore. All right. So, what's new with you, my friend? What good news can you bring to our listeners this week?
Well, you're right. I was personally sort of crisscrossing the North American continent today and just got back from Toronto, which, is the mecca of many things Canadian. The Maple Leafs are there, Taylor Swift is there, and of course, the headquarters of all of our largest banks are there. So I thought I could talk about folks that aren't in that list of the big six. So there's been a couple of, in the neobank category that have been doing really well in Canada. First off, I thought maybe I could talk a little bit about the news from the folks at Coho. And they've formed a partnership with Canada Post. So they're offering checking and savings accounts through the Canada Post locations. So when you live in a country with, 10 million square kilometers of land and only 40 million people to fill it, there's an awful lot of places where banking is continually hard to access. That's not a uniquely Canadian problem, but that, ratio of people to land mass is a uniquely Canadian problem. But chances are, within, relative ease for a lot of Canadians, there is a Canada Post location nearby you. So I really like that sort of narrative. People can say what they want about postal banking, but if you're trying to take your brand of finance for good, which is I think what Coho under Dan Eberhard's leadership has been persistently trying to do for the last decade or so, why not get as close to as many Canadians as you can with that? And when there's Canada Post locations all over the country in very far-flung locations, I think this is a great story.
You know, it is interesting because I wish we brought Stessa here. That's a topic that we keep going back and forth because we have similar challenges. Maybe, in not as acute as what you guys have, because I remember the first time you and I ever talked, this was years ago, you were telling me about how majority of the population is somewhere within a very small concentrated area and the rest is just dispersed. But we have similar problems. And then I remember maybe a decade ago when I first started in FinTech, I'm like, I love my post office. Why can't we do that? And everyone stared at me like, no, we do not like our post office. But I mean, short of that, and I think the UK have similar arrangements, don't they? With postal
Yes.
banking, and then there were ones that you have multiple banks all co-located in the same location. I mean, we need something. Not everyone has digital services that they can use and get on, and not everyone wants to use that.
And I think that second part of it is something we persistently forget. Those of us that are, trying to figure out how to serve people differently, and that typically looks like some sort of digital experience. There's people that choose not to use it. How do you not, ignore that those people still have things they need to get done in life that involve money?
I know. Or you can do a horse buggy. I think there are some. That was one in the Amish County. I remember reading an American Banker story that they actually have buggies. But then again, those are temporary, right? They're not always there. So I, I think it's just me. I think it's perfectly okay to have something different. All right, what else do you have?
So another one in the not one of the big six, and I'm not picking on you all, hey, RBC, TD, CIBC, BMO, who am I forgetting? National Bank. There's one more. Clearly we all love you because we all at least have one of your accounts, but I'm talking now about Neo Financial. And this one feels a little bit close to me personally because the founders are actually sort of from Winnipeg as well. Winnipeg maybe not known as a hotbed for fintech. So shout out to everybody that doesn't know where Winnipeg is. Chances are when you Google, the first thing you'll run across is that Simpsons episode. But, you know, Simpsons as predictors of the future, not so bad. Neo Financial do have offices in both Calgary and Winnipeg. They just this week announced that they raised, new funding, 360 million Canadian dollars. So, very significant raise for them. They've got an excellent valuation. They've been, I think, serving up to 1 million Canadians now is probably their most recent stats, which is terrific, right? I think that's amazing growth reflective of the kind of partnerships they're also building and trying to serve a wide swath of financial needs. So congratulations to them. It's another bit of great work. It's another way that we can continue to invest in the communities that are then serving the people that they're trying to serve. It's not all coming out of Toronto as well, which is, I think, another terrific fintech story for us.
I like those stories. We often tend to forget, again, as you say, not trying to pick on the big ones, but we forget there are lots of other demographics of people who want something different where, there are fintech solutions that's serving them. All right, I'll interject with one. This is not a new story, but it's something that I don't think has been talked about enough. Along the backside of a lot of stories about fraud, Penny has been writing quite a few of those on American Banker, where older adults get scammed, and we just don't seem to be able to get ahead of it. And there's always that argument about, well, the customer initiated and agreed to the transaction while the customer didn't know that they got fooled. So, hello, someone needs to take initiative here. So, talking about taking initiative, Commonwealth Bank of in Australia, a year ago, they started trialing using machine learning to detect potential digital transactions payments that are initiated from people who are abusing the other party. And they have been able to use AI to find common models, and they've been able to find those who are exploiting the other party. So much so that with the success, they are extending that data model free for other banks around the world. So just like how, and I didn't know this until I read the story, and thank you, Penny, for sharing it with me. Nowadays, people used to put things in, I guess, paper checks, and you get deposited, and then you read. It's nasty stuff. And now they figure out how to do that digital payments. And so with Combank, they can now read that, and they can find patterns amongst people who abuse others, and are able to work with the authorities to catch them. So that's not a so good story with a good ending, is using technology for good and protecting people who are suffering from financial abuse. I love that story. It's something in the mist and sea of AI hype that we find beacons of, oh, we can actually use this and create value for people that we don't typically think about.
Well, and I think it goes beyond the hype is the good thing. So, check out their repo on GitHub. It's out there, right? I would encourage any team working in any way within or adjacent to fintech to go and grab it, because why wouldn't you use something that has been proven to make a positive difference to people that are really potentially suffering here? We think about all of the ways that we're trying to, make the movement of money easier. But sometimes we really forget about where that can go very badly. And who wants to be in receipt of, the funds that their former partner owes them with these kind of, disparaging and abusive messages attached? Or that then becomes an actual communication vector because of all of these beautiful, send me a message here boxes that we've attached to, how much money are you transferring to this other person? So I think this is a terrific story. I love the blend of open source technology with something that has been proven to do some fintech for good. So I agree with you. This one's terrific.
I love that. We need some good stories here. So
For sure.
do you have anything else you can share with us?
Well, why don't I weigh in with one that comes from another Canadian source? So, Tal Schwartz, friend of the show. Tal, we are definitely going to have you on at some
We're
point.
working on it.
We'll make that happen for sure. But I was really excited to see him announce Exit North Ventures. So, a new fund specifically set up to fund early stage Canadian fintech. And I think there is probably, an overarching narrative on it's pretty hard to get funded no matter where you are, but maybe it's particularly hard to get funded in Canada. And so this is another area where it's, Canadians doing great things for other Canadians who will benefit other Canadians. Like how can I not love that story? So shout out to Tal and shout out to everyone that's involved in Exit North Ventures for that. And we're really looking forward to some of the great new founders that are, going to leverage that and do more for good for all of us.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear more. I saw him posting about it on LinkedIn, and I do wonder, like, oh, wait a minute, who are you looking for? What are you looking for? What do you need? We always know a lot of founders, so would love to be able to connect people. That's at least one thing that we can do, right?
Exactly. So if
Yes,
any of you need an intro to Tal, you can either hit up, Theo or myself as well.
we've been running after town, like, please do come on the show. We want to talk to you. And he got married earlier too. I
He
think
did.
that was why we missed him. Yes, yes. So congratulations, friend. So that's good. So on the topic of feel good story, gosh, this one I love because we don't hear this news too often. Um, and this is the news about female founders being able to raise $10 million for the creator community in FinTech. So here's the story that just broke recently. It's four Latina co-founders. They have gotten a Series A investment of $10 million led by Point72 Ventures and H20 Capital. And they also have some celebrity investors in there. It's an amazing story because it's so hard to get funding. To your point, Barb, and also it's been really, really hard for female founders to get funding. So, this happening late in the year, it's a great news for us. We need something positive to look forward to. And having and knowing that this is happening with a sliver of the creator economy and fintech founders that typically don't get too much traction. This is amazing. I hope that this does not become a one-off story, but something that continue forward because we need a little bit more. We need something else. And speaking of money, did you catch the news of Klarna filing for IPO in the US?
I did. That felt like a sneak attack story. I'm sure there were people in the know that, that didn't feel like it snuck up on them, but is that the start of a snowball of activity there? I think is what everybody's wondering. So, good for them, and I hope that sort of works out to advantage those that may then become funders themselves, right? How often have we seen this story play out
The flywheel.
where exactly, right? The people that have dug in and done the hard work to get something great going, and then they can take some of that and do more and take some of their own ideas forward. So I think that might be the more interesting outcome of this potentially.
That was interesting. And I think a lot of the chatter that people are talking about is, wait a minute, why are they picking the US for IPO? Why didn't they stick with London? And
Mm.
that was the story that Effie shared recently is let's look at the funding ecosystem in London. It needs a little bit of work. It feels like it's gotten a little quiet, and that could be a potential reason why Klarna has decided to do their IPO here. And Spotify did the same thing a couple of years ago. But what I'm looking out for is I wonder if this could be a start of the IPO market kicking off again, because this is late in the year. Could this be a good sign for next year? So we'll see. We'll see. That is certainly interesting. So gosh, I can't believe it's almost the end of the year. What's the one thing in the last few months? Because the last 2 months, I think we've all been on the road going a little bit insane. If we look back at the fall, which typically is a good time to reflect back on the year and looking forward to next year. What do we have in stock? What are some of the things that you find that was interesting? Because I know that this whole year we've been talking a lot about AI. We've been talking to a lot of people about AI, and it seems like we can't breathe without saying AI, the word. But I think what I found interesting, at least in the last 2 months, is AI seems to be here everywhere, but also seems to be in the background more. It feels like we're talking more about business process transformation. We're talking about more changes that we're doing enabled by AI, but AI is not front and center, like in your face kind of thing. You talk about some of the big banks in Canada, right? So RBC was one of them that they have completely reinvented a lot of the things that they were doing in the capital markets. And a lot of that is imagined by the newer technology, but they were not using the words, AI and all of that to lead their story. They were leading the story about like, oh, we've been able to bring down the amount of time it takes to open a business account from, I think it was like four to 6 weeks or something like that to, down to hours. And so that's how they were leading the story, is creating efficiency, creating value, and the back end enabled by some of the newer architectures and tech. But I think there is a change in how we are telling the story. I don't know. It was just something I caught the last few weeks.
Well, I think there's got to be something that cuts through the hype. Right now, everybody wants to be an AI company. And I firmly believe that how you get to be an AI company is paying attention to your fundamentals. You have to understand the state of affairs with your data in order to become an AI company. And everybody has their own version of what data is important to them and to their customers. If you can get that sorted, then you can start to add some of these new tools to your toolkit, but not before. And I do think there's a lot of hype still where everyone wants that easy button to press, right? Give me my AI right now. Um, and I'm sure that there's things that you can churn out that appear to be giving you results that you want, but my guess would be that they won't be sustainable because you didn't actually address the fundamental pieces first. So I would encourage folks that are wondering how to get started is to actually take that step back and consider, do I actually have the data that I need for these models to ride on top of? Whether it's, one that you're leveraging, like pick your flavor at this point, right? But it's a garbage in, garbage out scenario. So, how do you do a bit of house cleaning first? That would be what I recommend people think about.
I remember you had mentioned this in quite a few conversations about ago. You were talking about data strategy and how that is the first most important thing you need to do and make sure that is in place. Because otherwise, when your stuff is everywhere, when you don't exactly know where you need to get you know things together to even before starting to build the layers, is impossible. I don't remember if I mentioned there was a cartoon that I saw on LinkedIn. I think it was a while back, that had the picture of a house, and the house was really really old. It has like some pillars that's almost falling apart. It has a roof that looks like it absolutely needs work. And then there were two guys standing in front of the house, and they were like, one of them was like, I don't understand why it's going to take so long to build a window in this house. And it talks about exactly what, to your point, is when you have tech debt, when you have your things all over the place, it's hard to build on top of it. You need to basically bring things up together, modernize it, transform it to a way that you can start building on top. And I wonder if we're going to see more of that next year, or we're going to keep delaying it.
Yeah, I always like to think that I'm a glass half full person versus
You
the
are
other way around.
optimistic. Yes, you are.
So, I coming up to American Thanksgiving holiday, people considering what, they're thankful for, which obviously implies a bit of positive thinking, and then going into a new year, right, where everyone's thinking about What am I going to do differently that's better for myself and hopefully others? Like, let's ride that wave a little bit, everybody, and think about how you can approach these things differently. If you haven't gotten there yet, maybe you need a complete change of perspective then, going into the next few weeks, on how am I going to plan to do this differently and better in the new year.
I know one thing I know I plan to do better this next year. I've been saying that for quite a while, but I do want to start sleeping a little bit more. That is my life goal. I know some of my friends have been on my case. I will plan to sleep a little bit more than 3 to 4 hours. If I can get up to 6 consistently, I will be very happy. So that
That's
is
an excellent plan. I get behind that plan.
that is my goal for next year. But speaking of change, speaking of doing things differently, there was a story I caught earlier that was actually really cool because you and I both love sci-fi stories and things like that. And there is a apparently an ant group version of Jarvis. I forgot what was the name that they call it, but apparently it's like a life assistant of sort that it can help users uh, either through voice or text chat. They can order meals, they can get taxi, they can book tickets, they can find like, dining options. So it's like literally your personal Jarvis that's connected to Alipay. And I know, how long has Alipay been around? I don't even remember. At least a decade or whatnot. The super app that basically spurred the rest of the super app in Southeast Asia and Latam and Africa. So Alipay as a super app now, it has a agent attached to it. I would love to see that because I would like, wait a minute. So first, my first question would be, can it actually understand what I say? Because I have such a hard time with Siri. Siri does not understand me, nor does it like me. So I would love to see if I can finally find a version that will actually understand me and do all these things for me and tie to my payments. And it will be like a voice activated super app. Now that would be cool. I don't know.
So that spurs, hey, startup founders, because that's probably not me, but if we could take the idea of being able to deepfake anybody based on a few seconds of their own audio and video, but actually make it into a then custom, language model of ourselves, to improve the fact that it can be a complete struggle, to actually get yourself to be understood by these, assistive agents right now. Maybe there's a mashup there that we're missing that is actually the unlock for that.
Oh my goodness, I absolutely agree. Um, that's been a pet peeve of mine that we often talk about, and this is not a new problem, right? It's been around for quite a while, but I still have such a hard time getting any of these things to either understand me or understand me correctly. And I'll give you an example. So in Money 2020, I did a few video recordings with bank clients, with IBM, and with the video that was recorded, we wanted to do a transcript, right? Because, it's normal. Some people don't listen, they just watch. And so they need the words. Or some people, is an accessibility issue. So we've used one of the transcript services. Oh my goodness. It was so bad. And I kid you not, for like a 20-minute conversation, it would take us 2 to 3 hours to go back in, fix the transcription, and do all of that. And at the end of the day, after I think 2 videos, we're like, you know what? It will be much faster for us to basically go in and type out the caption than it was to try to use an AI program. And it wasn't because you can't understand the speaker. I could understand them perfectly. They do all have an accent, different accents. And it was such a huge struggle. I had no idea. I'm like, this is ridiculous, right? And it goes back to, what are you using to train your programs? It is, hello, it is 2024, and transcription services is not new. You would have thought they would have figured it out by now.
And if you look at, the benchmarking of models that are out there, whether they're the large, sort of privately owned language models or the open source ones, they are now starting to coalesce around, call it, high 90th percentile of accuracy on those human benchmarking scales of understanding. So to take a step back and tie a few thoughts together for me here, I would say, um, in financial services, we can very rarely afford to not be accurate with the outputs of these models, regardless of what and whom it is serving. If it's internal constituents, your employee groups inside of your organization to help them do their jobs better, or whether it's for your customers or others that you work with. You can't afford to get those things wrong. And so, do you actually have the tools and capabilities and platforms to compare the accuracy of these models as you're building out your solutions or experiences? That's also one of those fundamental pieces that you put in play. They totally exist. They're actually relatively easy and inexpensive to use. I can speak about that with firsthand experience. So again, I think it's just you need to have done your homework, assembled the right, skilled set of people with enough diversity of input that you're giving consideration to this. But we can do better because these tools do exist to make this better.
I agree with you. And that's the sad part, right? If you think about it, um, there are so many different cultures, so many different languages, so many different people, gosh, on the surface of the planet. And we keep saying, well, the future is AI enabled, the future is digital. Well, wait a minute. But if your future only includes understanding, I don't know how 1 billion people speak and get on with their lives, what happened with the 7 billion people that are not speaking English or not speaking English the way that your machines understand? What happens to those people, right? Because that's something we need to think about. And I remember, and I've used this example quite a few times. Uh, One of the Australian bank I had talked to earlier in the year, they serve most of the clients who don't speak English, right? They're Eastern European languages. And most of the LM out there commercially available, they're all English based or Western languages based. So they had to build their own stuff. Well, you can't get to an inclusive future, if your basic tools don't support the languages and the cultures of those people who use the services. I mean, that you would think it would be first thing we need to do. Or the case of India. Recently, the Indian government announced an initiative that they're going to build out their own LLM because they have so many different dialects being spoken in India. And they realized that the only way for their coaches to be supported is they have to do it their own. They have to do it themselves. And kudos to them. They actually have the people, the resources to do it. But what about the smaller countries? What about the smaller nations? Or there are a lot of different tribes that, their language is spoken, right? They're not documented, they're not written. What do we say? Say hello, sorry, bye, yep. Good luck. I don't know.
Yeah, I was reading an article on that topic about how many languages are disappearing because the number of, native speakers of those languages is, quickly disappearing, and those folks are dying off, and they have no one to teach it to and no tools to assist them in the teaching of language to others. So, this intersection of extremely powerful, computing models that are doing very well at increasing their ability to predict the next word in a language seem like a perfect fit for that problem.
Yes, and it can be done. There was a story a few years ago of initiative that's carried out, I believe it's the New Zealand government, that actively have a group that's tribal-based group that works with that particular First Nation people and talk to them, talk to the elders, document everything, and teach their algorithm to understand their language and have it documented and have it refined and teach it to the next generation. So it's intentional effort. I guess it's, as with all things technical and digital, it's intentional, but it can be done. And when, for the next year, I hope that we'll see more of, the FinTech solutions that's to your example, when we first started talking, the neobanks with the postal solution, serving people that we don't typically think about in ways that we don't typically think about, or tech solutions that serve demographics that we don't normally think of. Because we have the means, we have the tech. Let's do it. So looking forward, what's the two things that you look forward to, Barb?
I look forward to being given the opportunity to continue to meet new people who are doing interesting new things, and how I can be involved in that. That was definitely a recurring theme of the last few months for me. um Meeting people that I was admiring from afar from the internets in some way, and being able to get to actually experience those people in 3D and find out more about what, is driving them, and how does that intersect with things that I care about, and how can we, be involved in those things together. That I think becomes more important than ever, that interconnectivity and that mesh and web of us all and how we support each other. So that's actually what's getting me excited these days, is how can I continue to, positively and actively participate in that mesh of people.
Can I say yay? I would like that too. that is my goal for 2025. I am awful with connecting people. I have this much of a mental ability to do it in real life, and it depletes really fast after like the first day, and second day you'll find me hiding, third day you won't see me. um I don't know how to overcome that, but I do hope there are ways that I can meet small groups of people, a little group at a time, and because there are so many out there, and kudos to everyone in our community. They keep finding new voices, new people, amazing ideas. Shout out to Cafe, who just started their second cohort. I talked to some of the founders recently. I love everything that they do. And for those of you who are listening who want to do something different, Cafe is based in Delaware. It's led by Kristen. Do go look them up because they serve particularly the LMI communities all around the country. And I love what they do. So, there are pockets, many pockets of good people that are doing great things. So my goal is to let's uncover more of them. Let's find more of them. Let's tell more of the stories, and let's meet them, and let's create more positive, hopeful messages. Because God knows we need more of those.
Well, that's why, I'm so happy that you give me a bit of space in this space, that we can bring others in here. So I'm looking forward to more of those conversations. Stay tuned next week and see who else we get talking to, I guess.
Exactly. Are you kidding me? Like I love Partners of Crime. So this is perfect. And oh yeah, can I do a sneak preview of 2025? God,
Is
2025.
it a prediction that you're wrapping as a sneak preview? Is that what's happening here?
Oh God, I can't do prediction. I do not have crystal ball, but I might have something fun that is a physical something that can bring around and show and share with people next year. So stay tuned for that. It might or might not have something to do with AI, but I do look forward to it. I think next year is going to be really interesting. And do let Barb and I and Stephanie know. Stephanie's going to come on hopefully one of the shows before we wrap up for the new year. She's busy doing her country tour at the moment with her cohort, but do find the three of us, and let's keep the stories rolling. So thank you, Barb, for joining
Thanks,
us.
Theo.
Yep. And to our wonderful listeners, hopefully, you got some positive stories out from our chat this week, and we'll talk to you all next week. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of FinTech Views. Talk soon.